सर एटा सर आपन टिके शेयर कर देबे कि हेटी मु त आपन पठै थिली कोन पे मु होउनी मोर मु घरु करथली ऑफिस रे गले ओडे होंदा घरु करिया तो इछि अस्पताल में के देखौतिला त आपन जो स्क्रीन शेयर करते तो देखौतिला तो सेटा करो ना ना असला तो असते असला कले भल होता आज्ञा देखो होनी कौन एटा मोर प्रेजेंटेशन ऑन करना आपण प्रेजेंटेशन ऑन स्लाइड मोड को जाओ आगे तो गुडाई विंडो कौन खोल देंगे देखो तो रिमूव करते हैं ସେଇଆ କରୁଛି ବାହାରି ଯାଏ।
You are not audible, sir.
Hello. So, good morning, everybody. The speaker of the session has already joined, and due to some technical problem, he was not able to start his presentation. So that's why the delay. So let us bear with that. Anyway, so before starting his session, I would like to introduce you speaker of the session, Dr. M.K. Pradhan, General Manager, Factories and Boilers, OSDB, Odisha State Disaster Management Authority. He is a graduate in mechanical engineering from CET Bhubaneswar and a master's in heat power engineering from UC Burla. He has acquired PG diploma in environmental education and management from Sambalpur University, and he also graduated in law, and he has been awarded a PhD from Sambalpur University. So he is associated with National Safety Council of Odisha chapter as Vice Chairman and Life Member of Indian Society for Non-Destructive Testing, Indian Institute of Metals, Indian Institute of Welding, Quality Circle Forum of India, Indian Society of Technical Education, Institution of Engineers of India, and Quality Circle of India. So, with this short introduction, I would like to request Dr. Pradhan to. Hello. नहीं voice आसुनी.
Good morning, sir. Speaker on करंतु microphone on करंतु sir.
Hello. Sir?
Oh, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So sorry for the inconvenience. Anyway, so let me start. To say, I have been given an opportunity to speak on fire and chemical hazards and vulnerability. Let me just go to the quick facts. If you look into these real statistics in the entire globe, you will find around 340 million accidents that take place at work every year. And out of that, 160 million occupational diseases that take place. There is a basic difference between accidents and occupational disease. Occupational disease is not a normal disease like what you get maybe fever or cold. It is a disease which is inherited by a worker of his occupation. One of the example is worker is exposed in an environment. Okay. Let me go through this. Okay. Now looking into the chemical accidents, if you see in our India during last couple of years, on 1st July 2020, there was a high power committee formed by the government to probe into the Sterling vapor leak from the LG Polymers in Visakhapatnam, and in its report has stated that human negligence and serious lapses in safety. And coming to 2018, 6 workers died in a poisonous gas leak in private steel rolling mill. So these are the data. But you find that almost every year, many chemical accidents that take place across our country because of the serious lapses, either human negligence or on the part of the negligence on the conditions. So that is, one is called unsafe act, another is called unsafe condition. These are the certain statistics. Now, if you look into the UN, United Nations, or UNDP, the General Industry Framework, they have devised that disasters are not natural. What we say now, disaster to us are basically of two types. One is a natural disaster, one is a man-made disasters or chemical disasters. Natural disasters are flood, cyclone, earthquake, etc. Whereas man-made disasters may be a chemical disaster, a fire, an explosion, a toxic gas release, or even while transportation of a hazardous chemical, the accidents are coming. But now, this is the latest strategy of the government over the world, that disasters, even natural disaster, what we say, these are also not natural. These are happen because of the non-periodic or abnormal behavior of the human being. Suppose a cyclone is striking again and again, it is because of the human behavior. We don't care for the nature, so nature doesn't care to us. So that is how it happens. So we have to develop a sustainable work environment where our productivity will increase, our civilization will increase, we will prosper definitely, but we will not damage the environment so that the environment will not bounce back to us. Now, understanding a disaster risk, that is nothing but a hazard into exposure, into vulnerability. I will come to it later. Now, in Sendai framework in 2015, 7 strategic decisions were taken that in the entire globe, what we want to do, that we want to substantially reduce global disaster mortality. So people will, the death rate in the entire world due to disaster will try to reduce. That is one of our action plan. And that we want to achieve by 2030. And number of affected people, even if there is a cyclone, even if there is a flood, or even if there is a chemical accident, we must take necessary actions and arrangements so that the number of persons who are going to be affected by the disaster will be reduced. The economic loss in relation to GDP, we will try to reduce the economic loss and the damage to critical infrastructure and service disruptions. Critical infrastructures and service, suppose the power supply is off, suppose the water supply is off, the telephone connections are off, these are the service disruption, that also will try to reduce. So these are the 4 things which we want to be substantially reduced, that has been taken as a decision in the Sendai framework, which was taken place during 2015. And the 3 things that we want to substantially increase, that is the number of countries with national and local DRR strategies by 2020. DRR, disaster risk reduction. We will make the strategy so that the risk of disaster will be reduced. And international cooperation to developing countries, the availability and access to early warning system and DRR information. That is very much vital. Unless otherwise a early warning is given, just like cyclone, if you just open the TV, radio, or newspaper, you will find it has clearly give the early warning system, the path, the velocity, and the land falling, etc. Everything, the early warning is given. Once everything is known, definitely it will help the district administration or the government at a large to make the people evacuate from the area and take other remedial measures. So all the things are nothing but the decision taken in the Sendai framework. This is a policy of disaster risk reduction. Now coming to the hazardous chemicals. A hazardous chemical is a chemical that has properties with the potential to do harm to human or animal health, the environment, or capable of damaging property. So that is quite a very simple example, definition. Now coming to the categories of hazardous chemicals. Now the hazardous chemical that we come across not only in industries, in our home, in the workplace, in a godown, or even during transportation of hazardous chemicals, these chemicals can be corrosive in nature, can be flammable, it can catch fire, it is toxic just like ammonia or chlorine, and it is reactive and may be a biological infectious just like COVID, carcinogenic, cancer causing, and radioactive, all these types of chemicals. Now, the routes of exposure, these chemicals, now when they come in contact with the people, definitely they get an entry into our body, maybe through inhalation, maybe through ingestion, absorption, or injection. So these are the various methods by which the chemical enter into our body. Then depending on its properties, it behaves and make adverse effect. Now, what are the symptoms of possible overexposure? When these chemicals come in contact with the human being, now the symptoms that it comes, one is eye discomfort, maybe a breathing difficulty, maybe dizziness, headache, nausea, vomiting, and skin irritations. Once all these conditions come while somebody is working in the work environment, definitely we have to think that he has got a chemical exposure and it is giving a bad impact. Now, handling flammable chemicals. While handling flammable chemicals, the chemicals which can catch fire, maybe the LPG cylinder in our house, maybe the kerosene, petrol, keep containers closed when not in use, keep away from ignition sources, avoid contact with incompatible materials, only transfer to approved containers, bond all receiving containers, clean up spills and dispose. These are the certain precautions which are required to be taken while handling flammable chemicals. Now, coming to the chemical hazards. Chemical hazards are systems where chemical accident could occur under certain circumstances. Now, we have discussed hazard where there is a risk of exposure. Now, chemical hazard, now because of a chemical substance or chemical action, if anything goes wrong, and it can lead to a chemical accident. Now, what is chemical accident? Chemical accident means an accident involving a fortuitous or sudden or unintended occurrence while handling any hazardous chemical, resulting in continuous, intermittent, or repeated exposure to death, injury to any person, or damage to any property. So, this is a chemical accident. How it can originate? Now, the chemical accidents may originate in the manufacturing or formulation facilities. Manufacturing means in a factory. Formulation facility means where more chemicals, they are mixed in a proportion to develop at different products for market purpose, for marketing purpose. That is called a formulation facility. In these conditions, there is a chance of chemical accident. During the process of operation at any stage of the product cycle, while using a raw material, then it becomes a finished product. And from raw material to finished product, it passed through different processes. And at any stage of the process, there may be a chance of chemical accident. Even material handling, while handling a chemical inside the factory or while handling a chemical from the point from where it is being supplied on the road or transit, transportation and storage of hazchem means hazardous chemicals, and the vulnerability means the intensity of the hazard or the intensity of the accidents is sometimes compounded due to the location of major accident hazard industries closer to densely populated area. Now, a major accident hazard in an industry where because of the availability of lot of chemicals or hazardous substances, there is a chance of a major accident. Major accident means where at least one fatality in the outside, at least one fatality inside the factory where the processes are there. Then it is termed as a major accident hazard unit. If you look into the state of Odisha, we are having now the 35 industries which has been certified by the government of Odisha as major accident hazard industries. The steel plant, example may be Tata Steel, example may be PPL, Paradip Phosphate, example may be IFCO Paradip, example may be the IOCL Paradip Refinery. All these things are treated as a major accident hazard units because of their operation. And in case the population they come closer, because suppose there is a fire or explosion, now it toxic IFCO, they are storing around 50,000 tons of suppose ammonia. Now, because of some problem or because of some process deviation, suppose the ammonia start leaking. Definitely, because of the wind direction and wind velocity, it will start moving in that direction. Suppose it travels up to 2 kilometers. Now, within that 2 kilometers, even if outside the factory, whatever the population is available, now they are under vulnerability. So, in that case, it is the responsibility of the management and it is also the responsibility of the district administration to make the people aware that what exactly they have to do. Now, suppose in methyl isocyanate gas that leaked in Bhopal, a simple wet handkerchief could have saved many lives because that wet handkerchief would have absorbed methyl isocyanate like this. So there are awareness is also very much important. But what I want to tell you is a densely populated area will cause more harm in case of a chemical accident. Now, the chemical disaster is a higher order of a chemical accident. It is an unintentional release of one or more hazardous substance which could harm human health and the environment. Chemical disaster does not necessarily mean that it will cause death to the people. It can also cause damage to the environment. That is also coming to the definition of chemical disasters. And the causative factors of a chemical disaster is a fire, maybe an explosion, maybe a toxic release, maybe a poisoning, or maybe a combination of one or the above. So fire, as we know, is nothing but a chemical reaction. So whenever there is a flammable substance, and if due precautions is not taken, or because of some other source, because fire triangle is there, you are having a flammable substance. If you are having the oxygen or the air is available, and a spark is there, definitely it will start firing. Now, if the quantity is very high, then definitely it will start propagating. Then the coming to the explosion. Explosion is because of overpressure. Now, even if suppose oxygen is stored in a liquid oxygen form with a high pressure, now the container in which it is kept, it is sufficient because of the design, etc. All criteria are taken. But after repeated use, there may be some corrosion, erosion, etc. And in any point of time, now suppose the pressure inside the container, it becomes more, and the thickness or because of the strength of the container, it becomes weak. Then definitely it can explode, or maybe because of the overpressure. Suppose a container is kept at a particular pressure. Now, suppose because of some abnormality in the operation, now the pressure started increasing, and the safety valves or devices, etc., whatever is there, it did not operate. Then definitely there is a chance of explosion. Toxic release that I have already told, the ammonia, chlorine, etc. Whenever you use in Joycery chemical in suppose Ganjam, they are using a lot of chlorine. Now that chlorine gas, there is also every chance that it can release. So it will become the toxic release. Poisoning, even CO, carbon monoxide in Rourkela steel plant or any steel plant. So whatever happening in the process, in the BF gas is there. In a blast furnace, because of the process, now they get some BF gas, blast furnace gas, which contains around 33% of the carbon monoxide. Now that carbon monoxide, once it comes out, it will definitely, once we start inhaling, then it will, our blood will absorb it, and it is called CO poisoning. So then, in combination of other, all these things are the causative factors for a chemical accidents. We must look into the facts of it. Then, why such chemical accidents take place? It may be one of the things is a technical error in the system. Now, suppose your design is not adequate. Suppose the design is being made, but some error in the design. Or fatigue. Fatigue means the repeated use of the material. Suppose any container is there. Now, suppose it is repeatedly used, it has got a lifetime, so it can become fatigue. Now, corrosion, because of some abnormality, etc. So it can also corrode. So that is also is required to be looked into periodical testing, periodical examination under the statutory provision of law. With the best of the things, suppose in emergency or exigency, suppose something the chemical started leaking. Now, in that case, it must be the proper planning of the management that in case of a leakage, what exactly you will do. So that is called emergency planning. If the emergency planning is not good, then definitely it will create problem. We'll come to detail about the emergency planning. Now, the effects of micrometeorology, that also is very much important for a chemical accident. One of the example is wind speed and direction. You see, suppose ammonia gas starts leaking. Now, depending on the pressure, now we can say, but dispersion modeling is being done, it will say that suppose up to 1 kilometer radius it can move. Now, that 1 kilometer radius, it will move, that is a very theoretical one, but in reality, it will be guided by the direction of the wind. Suppose the wind direction is in towards north, definitely it will just make a sector, and where instead of the entire circle is not required, a sector is required with diameter that one with a radius of 1 kilometer, and that sectoral area will be affected. So what exactly we have to do? Now we have to now give a pointed attention on the people who are residing on that sectoral area. They are required to be evacuated in that case. That is what is coming to the emergency planning. So the wind speed and directions are definitely a very vital things. Then rate of precipitation, toxicity of the chemical, population in the reach of release, probability for formation of lethal mixtures, and other industrial activities being performed in closer vicinity. What it means is a cascading effect is also possible. Now suppose if you look into the Jagatsinghpur in Paradip area, we are having two industries. One is IFCO that has got around 50,000 metric ton of ammonia, and PPL also they are having 50,000 metric ton of ammonia. And the net distance between them is, suppose aerial distance around 5 to 6 kilometers. Now, suppose a leakage from one unit now can go to the other unit also. Suppose some of the hazardous chemicals or the flammable substances are also available in IOCL refinery. So that cascading effect is also possible. So these are the all things that also we have to look into while preparing a good emergency planning. Now, the first aid for the chemical emergency in certain things, because being the engineers, we are very much concerned. 98% of our study is related to the process. But coming to the first aid or safety, these are also very much vital. So what we have to do is, now suppose a chemical comes in contact with the eyes, what exactly we have to do? Don't rub the eyes. Hold eyelids open and flush with water for 15 minutes. Be careful not to contaminate the other eye. So what is happening? So these are the certain things which all the employees inside the factory or the people who are residing in the periphery or the vicinity of the industry, where because of the dispersion molding, there is a chance of spread of that chemical. Now there must be a proper warning at regular interval of time or awareness to the people that please don't do this. And now if it is required to flush your eye with water, so there must be a provision in the factory just very close to that hazardous chemical, a flushing arrangement with water for 15 minutes. So all these arrangements are required to be done. In case of contact with skin, flush the area with lukewarm water for 15 minutes, remove clothing and jewelry. In case of a chemical inhalation, move victim to fresh air. In case of chemical ingestion, induce vomiting only if told to do so by a poison center. Now, the concept of disaster management. You see, before 2015, our concept to disaster management was reactive. Reactive means it was depending on 4R: rescue, recovery, relief, and rehabilitation. At that time, it was there that there will be a disaster, and in case of disaster, we have to rescue people, we have to recover the property or behavioral, etc. We have to give them the relief, and we have to rehabilitate the people. That was the concept before 2015. But after Sendai framework from 2015 onward, the concept on disaster management has changed. It has become proactive. Proactive means we have to act before the disaster. So now the question comes, our actions will be planning, prevention, preparedness, and response. Planning means we have to plan. You see, one of the thing is, if we are having an effective planning, then even a natural disaster will not occur. So that we have to do in a global level. Then even suppose in a district, now also the district administration can plan well. They have to make a study that how things can do well. Now suppose in a cyclone prone area, suppose in a coastal area, now what we can make a good planning. Now whenever the cyclone will come, the wind's velocity will increase and the trees will start falling. Now we can plant trees in the species where the root of the tree can go deeper and the height of the tree will be less. I repeat again, we can plant trees where the root of the tree can go deeper and the height will be less so that it can withstand the wind. And we can also plan the plantation in such a manner so that the wind will be well arrested by that. That is a good planning. Now another thing that can come into, suppose the drains, etc. In a suppose because of the cyclone, etc., and followed by suppose the tide, etc. Now water from the sea can enter into the city through the drains. Now suppose we give a non-return valve type of door. So that door will allow the drain water to go, but it will not allow the tide water or sea water to come into the drains, so that unnecessary urban flooding will not be there. Even the direction of the buildings. Now the buildings which are in the coastal area, it must be wind proof, resistance proof. We should have around 300-kilometer wind resistance. Then these are called good planning. So this is a good step of disaster management that we have to look into. Even before 2015, any coastal area, now the people who are staying in the coastal area, so because of this wind, etc., their houses were damaged and they were giving relief. But now the planning is, instead of that, let us develop some core house which are wind or cyclone resilient. Cyclone resilient means it can withstand the wind speed. Now what will happen? We can give them a core house, we can identify people. So initially the cost may be high, but recurring expenses will be less, so that the damage will be less, and once damage will be less, casualty will be also less. So these are some of the planning steps that we have to do. Then called prevention. How can we prevent? Now suppose these are the examples I told you. Now in an area, the sea area, there is a coastal erosion. Now we can develop certain things. Suppose we will just raise the height of the land so that it cannot come like this. So there are some also preventive measures. Even suppose during cyclone, what we find, the electric poles, it overturns. Now, what we can plan also, even a electrical pole, the strength of the pole plus the wind resistance. While doing it, we must see that it will not bend because of the wind speed, etc. These are all preventive measures. Then comes preparedness. What is preparedness? A warning that a cyclone is coming or like this. Now people must get prepared. Number one, we'll try to ask them, you please release this, don't do this. Or they can be rescued to a safe area. There are a lot of cyclone centers, flood centers, around 834 in Odisha. So they will be taken. And all sort of people who must be ready, like ODRAF team, like NDRF team, like fire service team, like Red Cross team, the NGOs, they will be prepared with all sort of, suppose there is a chance of the trees will fall. So with the tree cutters, automatic tree cutter people will move so that they will clear the roads so that the movement is there. They will immediately electricity, they will start, anything is there, so they will do it. Then the telephone lines. So that preparedness, people must get prepared that what exactly will be required. They will think because of the past experience, they will have all tools, tackles, and persons ready so that immediately after the disaster, definitely they will launch into action and they will do it. So these are the concepts of disaster management. Now, coming to the challenges of CDM, this is very much vital for the technical people like you all. You see, what are the challenges for a chemical disaster management? That is the database on hazardous chemical. Now, suppose somebody will ask me that how much quantity of ammonia is being handled in Odisha. Unless otherwise a database is available, I simply cannot say. Even if the data that I am giving you, that there is 50,000 metric ton of ammonia is in PPL. But that 50,000 is nothing but the installed capacity. But if somebody will ask me right now, how much chemical is available in PPL. The maximum capacity is 50,000. It may so happen now it is little less than that. So now suppose Stirling gas leaked. Now the capacity of the tank was suppose 2,500 ton. But the question is, at the time of release, how much chemical was available? What was the pressure of the chemical? What was the direction of the wind? What was the velocity of the wind? If all these things can be known dynamically, then definitely a good dispersion modeling can give you a clear-cut picture that the gas will start leaking up to 1 kilometer towards northeast direction, and this is the population who will be affected. Then it will become helpful for the district administration to evacuate these people at the earliest. But in the absence of database, we are unable to handle the CDM. So now the professors, the students, they have got a very good thing, keeping in their mind now what best can be done. A good database can be created so that whatever the chemical industries, chemical installations, or even the transportation of hazardous chemical, suppose in the National Highway 5 or 6 that is moving, let me suppose it entered in the state of Odisha. Now suppose it will start moving to the another. So while entering into our state, definitely there should be some GIS arrangement so that the nearby fire station, nearby police station, or even the district administration, they must know that a tanker of this with quantity this has entered into my district, and it will travel around 60 kilometers throughout my district and will cover through these areas. And during that distance, suppose there are now 6 number of fire stations. So all fire station, once it moves from one fire station to another fire station, definitely there must be a message to that fire station that hazardous chemical truck has entered into your jurisdiction. Such type of database is required for an effective management of chemical disaster. Then land use policy. Land use policy is a very vital thing. If you look into the two accidents, one happened during 1964, another in 1984. These are basically both are from LPG in installations. But in one installation, around 10,000, around 1,000 people were affected. In another incident, only 17 people were affected. It was because that 1,000 were affected because the locality, the dense population was within 100 meter of the plant. In case of 17, it was observed that the locality was after 1 kilometer of the plant. So there was a buffer zone. Similarly, there is a concept, even the NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management, they have already given a circular or a guideline during 2007 that what should be the land use policy. Under OISD rule, Oil Industry Safety Directorate rule, they are having a land use policy. There should be a core zone and there will be a buffer zone. In the core zone, suppose you are having two concentric circles. The inner circle is the core zone. The outer circle, the distance, the area between the outer circle and the inner circle, that is called the buffer zone. And in the core zone, all hazardous activities will be there. In the buffer zone, plantations, maybe your building, office, etc., all these things will happen. So in the buffer zone, less people will be there. Now, suppose there are two industries adjacent to each other. So now what will happen? You are having two core zones of two industries and there are two buffer zones. So between two core zones of the two industries, now there are two buffer zones. So at least you are having some space available, and where the people, the availability of people is less. So the chances of the disaster will become reduced. So these concepts must come. But now if you look into any industrial state, now suppose you have been given a plot, you don't know that in the corner of the plot, somebody has stored the hazardous chemical. Now in case of a leakage, now the people of that industry are not going to be affected because of the wind direction, it traveled to the other industry. And the people in the other industry will be affected. Now you can tell me, this is what is called land use policy. And the other industry, they were not aware that such a chemical is there and it is going to do it. So a land use policy is a good technique which must be looked into while designing a plant or a process. These are very much important. Then rules pertaining to transport emergency, responsibilities of chemical unit, transporter, drivers and authorities. In case a chemical industry, they require some chemicals. So they have got a responsibility that what exactly the transport emergency should be. The transporter, the drivers, all the things they are having. In case of a leakage, what exactly they will do. Suppose it toppled, then what exactly they will do. All the things. Then guidelines for installation, storage, transportation of hazardous chemical, including GIS-based communication system. These are required. DM plans. DM plans are disaster management plans for chemical disaster management. And here the very important thing which are lacking nowadays, that is role of hospitals, highways and pipelines. Now, suppose in Jagatsinghpur area or in Paradip, now suppose ammonia gas leaked. Now we have to imagine that when the maximum inventory is available and in the maximum wind speed and in a maximum leakage condition, what will be the maximum area it can travel and how many people will be affected. Now suppose 1,000 people will be affected because of ammonia poisoning or because of the toxic. Now that 1,000 people are required to be rushed to hospitals. So district administration must consider that whether all hospitals taken together in that Paradip area, are they adequate house 1,000 victims? If not, then we have to go for a good hospital management. Now highways. Suppose in a highway, suppose the chemicals are being transported. Let us consider in Bhubaneswar, in Banivihar Chak, suppose an ammonia tanker or a LPG tanker, while coming it toppled. Now there is a chance of explosion, there is a chance of fire or toxic release. Now vehicles are coming from either side. Now how you will block the traffic, how you will remove it, how the passengers or the people who are traveling, they will be redirected. All the things requires a good highway disaster management planning. Similarly, pipelines. If you look into now this condition in Odisha, there are a lot of underground pipelines which are being put to action. These are all your petroleum products lines. Now, there are petroleum product lines are broadly classified into three categories. One is a crude line. Crude line means where crude oil is coming to the refinery. Now, in Odisha, we are having two crude lines. One is the ships which are coming to Paradip refinery, they are unable to come to the Paradip port because the depth is less. So there is a more, means a floating pumping station which is available inside the sea, which is 20 kilometers from the Paradip coast, and where the ships unload the petroleum product and it comes to the refinery. So that is called a crude pipeline. Even there is a connection between Paradip refinery to Haldia refinery. There is an interconnection. Suppose there is some problem in Paradip refinery, so the crude oil can come from Haldia or vice versa. So these lines are also moving underground and lot of villages, areas are also covered. Second is the product pipeline. From Paradip to Ranchi, PRPPL, Paradip, Raipur, Ranchi pipeline is moving. From Paradip, it is coming to Jatni. From Jatni, it is going to Sambalpur via Cuttack, Dhankanal, Angul. Then from Sambalpur, it gets diverted. One is going towards Ranchi via Jharsuguda. Another is going to Raipur via Borgod, like this. So that is around 1137 kilometers. Out of that, around 600 maybe kilometers is in Odisha. Then another line which is now going to be operational, that is towards Paradip to Hyderabad line. So the same line will come to Jatni. From Jatni to Noyagad, it will go to Ganjam, then it will go. So that is line. The third line, that is a gas pipeline. Now Urja Ganga, the Hardaspur project, which is coming through Bokaro, will enter through Sundargarh and it will cover around 11 districts in the state, in all industrial districts like Sundargarh, Jharsuguda, Sambalpur, then Dhankanal, Angul, Jajpur, Jagatsinghpur, like this. And there are also, it will cater three needs. One is the commercial needs in industries. So there will be tapping points where industry can tap their pipelines, and they can use the gas, CNG, LNG gas for their process in furnaces, etc. Even the big industries like Hindalco, etc., they are trying to change their thermal power plants, coal-based thermal power plant into gas-based power plants. So all these things can happen. Then second is the automobiles, the pumps, etc. They are also, the connection will be given so that the autos, the vehicles, they can be also provided with that gas. Then third is your domestic gas. Now in Cuttack and Bhubaneswar, now two lines are coming, that is called city gas distribution centers. Now almost suppose around 5,000 kilometer of pipeline will be there in Cuttack district only. Out of that, only 500 kilometers is now covered. Few areas are charged. So after 2-3 years, when it will be fully charged, you will find that inside the ground of Cuttack, meter below of the land of Cuttack, there are 5,000 kilometers of pipelines through which the gas is passing. So all these things can lead to lot of hazards. So for that also, the disaster management plans are required to be planned, prepared, and mock drills are required to be done, and all sort of care. Red book is nothing but the telephone numbers of all important people. Now suppose we have to talk to the GAL authority. GAL are responsible for this city gas distribution pipeline. You will talk to them. Who are the responsible person? Suppose NDRF, who are the responsible person? From fire, who are the responsible person? Red Cross, who are the responsible person? So everything will be covered in a book that is called Red Book. So in case of emergency, you can directly contact. And these telephone numbers are required to be best accident information system. Whenever there will be an accident, then immediately it will be given in the web, so that everybody, all authorities, not only the person concerned, his higher up, etc., they can browse it and they can come to know what exactly has happened, what action is already been taken, and what is required to be done. So all these things are the challenges, because all these things require technological updation, and these are the very vital and very important brand teachers and the technical professionals. Then the other things, that is a safety audit. In each industry, unless otherwise a safety audit is carried out. Safety audit is just like an audit where only safety parameters are required to be done. Now, what are the hazards there? What are the inbuilt safety precautions which are required to be done, whether it is done or not? So all the things are required to be seen. Then industrial pocket-wise hazard analysis is also required to be done. Industrial pocket-wise hazard analysis, it means, now suppose in an industrial pocket, like suppose Jagatsinghpur or Paradip. Now in that area, there are a lot of hazardous, there are 8 MS units, and each unit, so what is the hazard? So all the things will be considered, and we have to find out that what exactly can be done. Vulnerability and risk assessment of transportation of hazardous chemical stretches of national highways and state highways. Now, if suppose in our Odisha, now in the national highway, suppose enters into Balesar. From Balesar, it goes out after Ganjam. So suppose there is a patch of 400 or 500 kilometers. Now in that patch, we can make a short distance, maybe 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers. And we have to make an analysis that how many trucks or how many tankers of hazardous chemicals are being transported average every day, and what is the risk potentials. Suppose ammonia, what will be the risk potential? So which are the hazardous area? What are the facilities required? Now one of the example is, suppose there is a fire. Now the fire brigade team from the nearest fire station will move definitely. Now when the tanker is exhausted, water is exhausted, now that water tanker is again required to be recharged. So from where it will get water? So a water source is required. So it is advisable that every 30 kilometer or 20 kilometer patch, or maybe 50 kilometer of the national highway, there should be a good water body available by government, so that a plenty of water will be available, which can be utilized by the fire team to fill up their tankers. So these are a good planning stage. So all the things, while designing the roads, etc., All the things are also to be looked into. Now, suppose a big mall is there. Now, in a big mall, suppose there is a fire. Now, you immediately inform the fire brigade. Now, the fire tender will come. Now, there must be adequate space around the mall so that the fire tanker can move inside all through. So that's why. But if you just visit any mall where a lot of people are there, you will find there is adequate space is not available so that the fire tender can move all through. If that is not possible, then you have to make a good fire hydrant system inside that. Then do's and don'ts during a chemical accident, training awareness generation, mobile hospital. You see, mobile hospital is another factor. Suppose somebody has come across with a CO poisoning. Immediate medicine is you have to give them oxygen. Now, suppose in a factory, the nearby hospital is 20 kilometers away. Then take him to the hospital. So it will take half an hour. And that is the golden time. And during that time, suppose he doesn't get oxygen, definitely it can lead to fatal. So what happens? Now immediately, if the accident is there, immediately the information will go to hospital, wherein followed by this. Out of 12,748 fire deaths in 2018, which means that around 35 Indians die in a fire every day, out of which 7,244 were women, while 5,503 are men. Means more women are now in the risk of the fire problem. Around 56% of the deaths were because of home fires. As many as 2,672 people, of which 1,967 were women, were killed in cooking gas explosions. A total of 1,970 fire accidents were caused by electrical short circuit, of which 1,368 were men. Our homes are only increasingly becoming unsafe as they pose a huge fire threat because we have so many inflammable items, decorative materials, electrical gadgets, LPG connections, etc. Now, the fire incidents, if you look into in our country, in 2020, Calcutta slum fire. In October 2020, a fire petrol pump in Bhubaneswar, petrol pump like this. So there are some cases that incidences of fire are, if you look into the TV, you will find every day in and day out, there are cases of fires. Now, these are the fire incidences also for the last I have told. Now, what is fire? Fire is a rapid oxidation of a material in the exothermic chemical process of combustion, releasing heat, light, and various reactions. Fire starts when flammable or a combustible material in a, these things I hope are quite known to you. So let me go because of the time. Now, if you find the major causes of fire, the statistics says the electrical fire contributes to 23%, smoking, because of smoking, it is 18%. Heat caused by friction in industrial machinery, 10%. Overheating like this. So these are the major causes. Now, classes of fires. It can be class A, B, C, D, K. Ordinary, that is wood, paper, cloth, rubber is class A. Flammable, combustible, liquid, class B. Energized electrical equipment, non-conducting extinguisher agent C. Fire involving combustible material, etc. So these are the classifications of fire. Now, fire services in India and its present status. Fire services in India come under the 12th schedule of the Constitution under the provisions of Article 243W of the Constitution. Fire prevention and firefighting services are organized by the concerned states, union territories. Now, need of the fire framework and plan. Now, suppose in Bhubaneswar, why there is a need to prepare a fire framework and plan? It is very much important. While designing things, now the engineers, the architects, even the electrical, civil, even mechanical, so they must look into certain things. But one is the increasing population saturation per unit area. In a particular area, we have to now devise that how many people are really allowed and what is the saturation point. So beyond that, we can say it is overloaded or it is overpopulated. So the term we say overpopulation, that is required to be defined area-wise. That depending on this, how much people will be required. That is one thing. Second, It is not that you just give me people, I will put it somewhere. Then definitely there will be problem environment. Now the latest concept worldwide is to develop multi-storied building. Once you start developing multi-story building, definitely more and more people will be accommodated at less and less space. Now, in that case, now your problems multiplies, because in case of a fire at a high-rise building, now rescue of the people is very much important. If you look into the any apartment in any area, you will find they are having a balcony. Now, during design, the balcony or whatever they give, it is open. But for the safety or security or maybe for other reasons, the resident, they just make a grill on that balcony. And it is something not desirable under the Fire Prevention Act. Why? Now, suppose there is a fire tomorrow. What will happen? Now, the residents, they are required to be rescued. Suppose the main door, you cannot open because there is a fire outside the main door. Now, the only path left is that the residents of that flat are required to evacuate. But now the balcony which was opened yesterday is now closed today for your own safety, which become unsafe because of a fire. Now the fire team will come, they have to cut that grill work to rescue. So all the things are not in the mind of the people when they just make a grill. Even if you are doing grill for a safety purpose, you can make a window in the grill and you lock it so that in case of emergency, you can unlock it so that it can be utilized as a rescue purpose. In a bus, you will find there are another emergency door is there. In case of a problem, suppose the main doors, etc. are closed, so emergency door can be used. Similarly, for fire service also, one emergency exit is required. So, these are used as emergency exit. So, these are not required to be done. So, awareness is required to be there. Now, higher number of commercial utilities. More and more commercial utilities are coming in terms of office, in terms of business purpose. Now, more and more people are coming. Now, unless otherwise all fire precautions are taken, definitely it can lead to problem. Higher human time spent in cramped public utilities. More and more people now they are spending time in an area like in a bus stand, in a railway station, or in a film hall, or in a restaurant, in the public places, maybe in a conference hall, maybe in a auditorium, marriage function. So in all these, when we book a conference hall for a suppose marriage, but we never give any priority to the fire prevention. So what exactly, whether it is done or not, the people who are inside, now suppose there is a fire, how people will start to remove or evacuate, then increasing trend of fire incident. All these things require that the government at local level must have an effective fire safety plan. Even today in India, Bangalore is the only city in India today who have developed a fire safety blueprint. And it is done by Beyond Carlton. And now OSDMA in Odisha, they are also going to do a MOU with that Beyond Carlton to prepare the fire safety plan of Kotak and Bhubaneswar, the twin city of Odisha. So that is a good step ahead by the government of Odisha. Now, the existing governance environment, existing fire prevention regulation, there are Municipal Corporation Act, there are building regulation, standard regulation, there are fire service units in Bhubaneswar and Cuttack. So in the Municipal Act, there are certain municipal acts. Now, whatever building, etc., you are going to do, then building standard regulation, whatever building, the materials, the type of construction, all these things are covered under the building standard regulation. Then there are fire service, the fire act, fire rules, etc. are there. So these are the following things for which we have to do. What we lack? We lack the public awareness. That what I have told, that the balconies of each apartments are now covered. For that, we have to go for a public awareness. Home fire preparedness. Even in our home, while we are in our home, we have to consider that suppose there is a fire, so what exactly we will do? Number one, how to extinguish it. That is the fire to do. And whatever the extinguishing material, this must be available close to the flammable substances. That is the first step. Then number two, even if there is a extinguishing material, we must know how to use it. The people who are staying in the flat or in the apartment, in the house, they must know that how to use it. Then third thing is, then how can you move from the area? The exit route, all the things. So suitable equipment with fire service, fire accident, the basic first aid, the enforcement mechanism. So all the things are required to be put into action. Now, key features for fire safety. Number one is the classification of building must look. Now, coming to the fire prevention, the classifications of buildings. The buildings are classified in these categories. Group A is residential, Group B is educational, Group C is institutional, Group D is assembly, where assembly people will be there. Then business, mercantile, industrial, storage, and hazardous. So these are the classifications of building for which different fire codes, fire preventions are required. And while designing even a building, all these fire precautions are required to be taken. Now, coming to the residential building, what is the residential building? Where sleeping accommodation provided with or without cooking or dining or both. Now, these residential buildings are again subdivided 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One is lodging and rooming, not more than 40 beds. One or two family dwelling, dormitories, apartment houses, hotels, and hotels of starred hotel category. Now, for different categories of residential building, now different fire precaution measures are required to be taken. Then educational buildings, schools up to senior secondary, other training institutes, all these things. For that also they have to go for the fire things. Institutional buildings, these are different categories. I hope my presentation is available. This can be shared with all participants also. In case of any problem later on, they can discuss, because it is a very emerging subject nowadays in all metro cities, including our twin city Cuttack and Bhubaneswar. And a lot of brains are required to go into it. Even while designing a hospital, if the fire measures are not taken, later on it becomes, in some hospital there was problem, in Sadhguru hospital there were problems. So why such problems they cramped in? So these are also required to be looked into. Then coming to the assembly building, these are again divided into 7 parts, up to 1,000 people, up to 300, 200, like this. So for different categories of people, we have to see what are the fire safety precautions to be taken. Then business buildings, again 5 types. One is office, banks, laboratories, computer installation, telephone exchange, etc. So all these things are required. Mercantile buildings like shops, stores, departmental stores, like this. So then industrial buildings, low hazard, moderate hazard, high hazard, depending on the things. Again, the fire systems will vary. Then storage buildings, then hazardous buildings. So all these things are the classifications based on which our rules, regulations are there. Now, demarcation of fire zones. Once you identify all the things, then in a particular zone, if you have to go for a fire load calculation, again a highly technical subject. You have to understand the flammable substance available. You have to understand how many people are available. Then you have to understand what is the approach road, what are the facilities available. Considering everything, if you find, then the fire zones will be there. Fire zone 1, 2, 3, areas having residential, all these things are coming under fire zone 1. Fire zone 2, these are coming to business, industrial building. Fire zone 3, now the storages, LPG, godown, etc. All the things are coming. Once the demarcation is made, then based on the fire zone 1, 2, 3, again the fire guidelines will come. Now the fire safety of the building, the broad coverage are the fire prevention, design, construction, and building material. You see, for fire safety, now while designing a building, what are the precautions you will take? So one of the example is, suppose it is a high-rise building. Now, the spiral staircases are not a good means of exit. It is prohibited under law. So, a technical person, while designing a building, suppose he makes a spiral staircase. So, from technical point of view or design point of view, it may be correct, but from point of view, it is not correct. Now, in case of a building where more than 30 people are required, now the nearest approach to exit should not be more than 30 meters. That is under the Act. Now, the doors of a conference hall, it should open outward, not inward. That is under the statutory provision of law. In designing, if you even do it inward, from design point of view, technical point of view, it may not be wrong. But from administrative and legal point of view, it is wrong. Why? Now, because suppose there is a fire in the conference hall. Now, people will start moving out from the hall. So, if it upward, then it will not make an obstruction for the free exit. But if it opens inward, every time a person goes out, it will again try to close down. So it will not be a good, it will be an obstruction for free exit. So it should be open outward like this. There are certain facts and figures which you have to look into. This is coming under the fire prevention design stage. Unless in the design stage you take care, it becomes again difficult. And during construction means that your staircases, suppose lifts, suppose your the ventilation space, all the things. Then even the housing of the fire gadgets, or maybe suppose they have fire sensors, all the things are also required. Then building material, there are some building materials which are fireproof, which immediately will not catch fire. Efforts must be given to use the building materials which will not catch fire, immediately. Okay. Then coming to the life safety measures in the event of fire. Suppose a fire is there in an apartment, then what exactly you will do to save the life of the inhabitants in that area? For that, there are many things that also we have to look into. Then fire protection equipment to detect and extinguish fire, means detect a smoke detector. Then extinguish fire, the automatic sprinklers, all these systems are required to be given. Then there should be a fire hydrant line. There should be hose pipes available. So there should be fire alarm. So all the things are the fire protection things which are also required to be given while designing a building, etc. So these the technical people must look into. Then the basic properties of building material, that is a flame resistance. Flame resistance is the property of a substance not to flame in case of contacting with fire in the air. Materials can be divided into non-flammable material, fire retardant material, and flammable material. Non-flammable materials are brick, natural stone, concrete. Fire retardant material, gypsum board, cement asbestos board, plasters. Flammable materials are plywood, wood, oil, like this. So we must see that the non-flammable and fire retardant material must be used instead of flammable materials. Plants storage and use of flammable materials. Plants in which large quantity of flammable materials are either displayed, used, or stored will usually present a greater hazard than those where the amounts are kept small. Quantities of flammable material should be reduced. Flammable material should be replaced by less flammable material. Excess flammable material should be taken outside. Like this, these are some of the precautionary measures that you have to take care. Now there are certain norms for setting up fire stations. That is response. You see, in case of a fire, now it is the duty that the fire stations available, they must quickly respond. Now this is given by a fire safety norm. That the response time means that time you get a call in the fire station and the time it takes to reach to the spot. That is called response time. So in urban areas, it should be 3 to 5 minutes, and in rural area, it should be 20 minutes. It is being defined under the statute by the Act so that you can address to the problem. Now, the urgent action requires states to get vulnerability analysis done of all densely populated, important and hazardous locations, and the fixed requirement of equipment, manpower, and spread awareness amongst the people regarding do's and don'ts so that such incidents are prevented. And if they occur, they are tackled promptly. To prepare a complete plan and work out the total requirement of the manpower and equipment of the entire state. So, at the present juncture, to advocate for the fire safety, two things can be done. whatever has already done and what is going to be done in the future. Whatever has already done, immediately a fire audit is required to be done. In our house, we will do it by us. In the colony also, we'll try to do it. In the ward, in the city, in the block, like this. A total fire safety audit is required to be done. Definitely, it becomes a very trouble and time-taking subject. But anyway, this is required. Then the precautionary measures and some innovation, some medicine, etc. done so that one can become fire resistant or fireproof. Then the second is, in the future, our planning, our action should be in line so that we can have a good environment where the chances of fire is less or minimized. That's all. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. I hope I have completed in time, but because I did not get much time, I had to just go a little fast. Anyway, I will request anybody if they are having any queries.
Sir, it was such a beautiful presentation. Actually, it is a nice presentation. Small things, but summed up in a very good manner. And we could get aware of all these problems, different hazards and disasters. It was altogether a beautiful presentation. Doesn't matter, there was some 15-20 minutes less you got. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So anything from other participants? No. So thank you, Dr. Pradhan, for your nice presentation. I also am equally thankful to the participants for their present hearing. On behalf of the organizing committee, once again, I would like to thank Dr. Pradhan for agreeing to give a very informative talk on this platform. So now we are going to conclude this session.
Ajay, there is one participant, Amar Ranjan Mahapatra. Are you available still? There.
Perhaps he has left, I think.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so now we are going to conclude the session.
Okay. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.